This is Overnights on ABC Local Radio. Good morning, I'm Annie Gaffney. Well, this man who is joining me next was correctly able to predict the global financial crisis a couple of years back. He's been forecasting trends for some 30 years, and if you're wondering about the trends that'll shape this year and next, Gerald Celente could have a few ideas for us this morning to think about. He's from the Trends Research Institute in New York City. And Gerald Celente, it's great to be talking with you on Overnights this morning. Hello.
Well, hello, Annie. Buongiorno.
Yes, buongiorno to you. The Aussie dollar, it's riding high. The United States is still printing money. European countries are still borrowing money to bail themselves out of debt as we move into 2011. How are we looking financially? Are we still on rocky ground?
Oh, no, the brilliant heads of the central banks and all those financial finaglers, they have it all figured out. Happy days are here again.
Oh, that's so good to hear.
Isn't that nice? Yeah, no, you can't get out of this by printing more digital money not worth the paper it's not printed on. They're devaluing the currencies worldwide. A currency war is breaking out. And the countries around the world are fighting to keep their currencies from going up too high because it's going to close them out of the export markets. And the United States is the major perpetrator of devaluing its currency, followed by China. So we're going to go through very, very difficult times in the years ahead. A bubble has been created. It's called a bailout bubble. Remember in the European Monetary Union, they had the Lisbon Treaty and the Maastricht Agreement, and they weren't supposed to bail out failing companies or buy up the bonds of busted sovereign debt-laden countries. And what are they doing? They're bailing out countries and buying up bonds. And the United States Federal Reserve, under the table, we just found out about this about a month ago because of new legislation, and for this one time only they reported what they did over the last year. 20 trillion, that's with a T, 20 trillion U.S. dollars pumped out of the Federal Reserve of the United States to banks around the world, hedge funds, companies, to give them low interest or no interest loans to keep this Ponzi scheme afloat.
Incredible. The shady dealings of financial institutions have been blamed for the global financial crisis. What reform, if any, can you put a finger on right now has happened to change that situation?
How about absolutely nothing? The laws that were put in place to stop this from the beginning, it was called the Glass-Steagall Act in the U.S. that was put in place in the 1930s. Because what happened in the 1920s with the stock market crash is merely a replay of what's going on now. So they put these laws in place to prohibit these derivatives and from banks becoming these financial giants. And it was under the Clinton administration that they did away with them. And it's just I love it back in the States where they still have I'm a political atheist. I don't believe in fairy tales or kiddie talk, so I don't believe in this political jive. And so if you listen to me over the years, whether it was Bush, Obama, Clinton, Reagan, it's been the same story. I look at things for the way they are, not with an ideological lens. They had this wonderful slogan of Obama: change you can believe in. Yeah, how about this for some more change you can't believe in? He just put a new chief of staff in there, Daly from Chicago, that wonderful crime syndicate city, and he's now the new chief of staff, formerly of J.P. Morgan Chase, head of their lobbying department. Oh, and this is the guy they used to call the NAFTA czar under Clinton. How about that for some change? And if that's not enough, he brought in this guy, Gene Sperling, who was instrumental in deregulating the industries, the financial industries, so that the banks could commit the greatest bank robbery in world history, but the banks are doing the robbing. And before that, you had Henry Paulson, who was the former CEO of Goldman Sachs, running the Bush Treasury. So it's one, Wall Street has hijacked Washington. People better grow up and know the deal. The banks are in charge, and they're becoming indentured servants.
Strong words, Mr. Celente. 1300 800 222 is our talkback number this morning if you'd like to put a question to Gerald Celente. He's our guest this morning on Overnights. He's a trend spotter. He comes from the Trends Research Institute in New York City. Describe the situation for us in America, Gerald. Has there been any kind of comeback from the dire times of 2008? How is it looking there?
Well, there has been a bit of a rebound because of the trillions of dollars. Besides the $20 trillion I mentioned, there was another $13 trillion that was lent, spent, and guaranteed by the Federal Reserve and by Washington with these stimulus and bailout programs. So yes, there's been a temporary rebound, but unemployment, you're looking at unemployment at the rate it's going now. To increase unemployment, there's studies that are showing it's going to take 37 years to get back to the levels before the Great Recession hit.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so, what's going on, I guess you probably can't tell by my accent, but originally a Bronx guy. I've been around a while, and America was the greatest entrepreneurial country in the world and the most egalitarian. Now the gap between the rich and the poor is the widest in the United States of any of the industrialized nations. So to answer your question, has there been a rebound? Absolutely. The rich have gotten richer and the big have gotten bigger. 30 years ago, the 10 largest banks controlled 20% of the action in the USA. Now those 10 largest control 80% of all the wealth and assets moving through the system.
Let's take a call now from one of our talkback callers, Dave, near Yass in New South Wales, who'd like to put a question to you, Gerald Celente. Go ahead, Dave. What would you like to ask Mr. Celente this morning?
Well, Mr. Celente, very interesting to hear you talking about the American banks, and it certainly is a great source of concern. And as we know, the Bush family have been very involved in banking for many years, and from the initial setup. And there's a theory that some of your your presidents were shot when they threatened to bring control of the money supply back to the government as opposed to the Federal Reserve, which is a separate entity. Am I right about that?
Well, there's dispute about that. Actually, you're talking about the JFK taking the currency out from the Federal Reserve and backing it by silver and other precious metals. And it's not clear, and I've been following it for a while. I would love to know if it was, but there is some doubt about it. However, having said that, I mean, they'll kill anybody at any time for anything, so I don't put anything past, what's going on.
How's it be?
All right, Dave, thank you. We'll move on and take another question from Adam in Brunswick this morning. Hello, Adam.
Hello.
What would you like to ask Mr. Celente?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say I'm a big fan. I've been listening to him for a while and appreciate his political atheism and enthusiasm. But I was wondering what he thought of the upcoming releases of WikiLeaks about Bank of America and basically about WikiLeaks in general.
Okay, go to our website, Trends Journal. That's our publication, trendsjournal.com. Go to the media blog. And when you go to the media blog, scroll down and you'll see me on Fox TV up against a CIA agent and 4 other people trying to bash me down. I'm all in favor of WikiLeaks. The reason they don't want WikiLeaks out there, forget the jive about, it's going to endanger our sources out there and we can no longer do business on a confidential level. What WikiLeaks has shown is what a bunch of thieves, criminals, lightweights, losers, and liars the world leaders are, and these so-called diplomats. Remember in high school and college, somebody wanted to be the class president or the head of the student council, and they were the suck-ups and the brown-nosers and the glad-handers and the insincere and the overly ambitious that only thought about themselves. Guess what? Berlusconi, Sarkozy, Merkel, Bush, Obama, Clinton, go down the line. Quinlan, you got over there. Or you go up and down. You're the whole group. And that's what WikiLeaks is exposing. And that's what they don't like. Because when they show their weaknesses and who they are, they start losing control. So when you ask about the Bank of America issue, of course there's going to be a leak about it. The whole system is rigged. Again, who was the Treasury Secretary under Clinton that deregulated the Glass-Steagall Act? It was Robert Rubin. Where was he from? Goldman Sachs. Where did he go after they deregulated it and created these financial giants like Citigroup? Oh, he went to Citigroup. Oh, and how much did he make with Citigroup? Oh, between 150 and 500, $300 million. And who was before him and Bush, as I mentioned? Oh, it was Henry Paulson. And where was he from? Goldman Sachs. And what did the U.S. taxpayer have to do? Oh, we had to bail out Goldman Sachs for making bad bets with AIG to the tune of $13 billion. So, yes, they hate WikiLeaks because it's exposing what a bunch of frauds these so-called world leaders are.
Adam, he doesn't mince his words, does he? Thanks for calling in this morning.
Thank you.
And George, you're in Sydney as well. You want to talk about the gold standard. Oh,
hello.
Hello, George. We've still got you there. Good morning.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Mr. Celente's definitely speaking my language. I agree with virtually everything he said. I just wanted to ask whether he agreed maybe that going off the gold standard back in the 70s had resulted in these financial demons off the leash, so to speak, to be able to create all this virtual money because they don't have to back it up with any kind of hard collateral assets. And my second comment and question basically is, how is the possible appearance of peak oil a bit earlier than a lot of people have predicted in terms of maybe reaching the peak oil supply and things are going to get much more expensive very quickly, how that's going to affect economic progress in the near future, and we're seeing the climate change
George, hold that thought there. We've just lost Mr. Celente temporarily. We'll come back to you in a minute and your question, if you can just hold the line there, please. Thank you. A few questions there from George in Sydney, and we'll have Mr. Celente back on the line in just a tick to address some of those questions from George.